Okay, so today we will be doing animal form and function. Recall that a tissue is a group of one or more cell types which carry out a specialized function. So now we are going to learn about the different types of tissues that make up a person. Right? The four main types of tissues, as you can see, is epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. So epithelial tissue, you would have heard about it previously in O levels also. The skin is made up of an epithelial tissue. Muscle tissue, you all know what a muscle tissue is. So all of these muscles are muscle tissue. Nervous tissue makes up your nerves. Connective tissue is the one that you might have heard about right now. You wouldn't have heard about connective tissue before this. Okay? You have? Where? All levels? Okay. What is a connective tissue then? Blood is a connective tissue, yes. Right. What is a connective tissue? If I ask you what is a tree, will you say mango? No, I didn't ask for example. What is a connective tissue? Okay. Right. I will accept that answer for now. Right. So let's take a look at the first major type of tissue. So here you have animal tissues. Even if the front part says plant form and function, we are actually learning animal form and function. First thing that we are going to learn about under animal tissues would be epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue. Okay, let's take a look at what epithelium is. It covers external or internal free surfaces and organs. This epithelial tissue is like a book cover. So if you take the most visible epithelial tissue to you would be your skin. Your skin is made up of an epithelial tissue. External or internal free surfaces. So externally you have the skin. You have the skin and it is made up of an epithelial tissue. What does it mean by an internal free surface organ? Yes. Easier thing that you can look at even each other's is if you open your mouth, the inside lining of the mouth is also made up of epithelial tissue. The tongue, below the tongue, also made up of epithelial tissue. The outer covering is made up of an epithelial tissue. Then once you go deeper into the mouth, you find the pharynx. Do you remember the pharynx? It is the common pathway for both the respiratory and the digestive system. So let's go further in by the digestive system. Right? So after you pass the pharynx, you will go to the esophagus. So esophagus is a hollow tube. So the inside part is also made up of an epithelium. So like that, the esophagus will go down and eventually form the stomach. The inside of the stomach is also epithelial tissue. Then that stomach forms a small intestine. The small intestine continues all the way and winds around, eventually forming the large intestine. Inside of the large intestine, the covering is also an epithelial tissue. Then up the ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, rectum, anus, again epithelial tissue. Outside the anus, you will have the skin, that is also epithelial tissue. So the entire internal surface and external surface is covered by this epithelial tissue. So that example was given for you to visualize it, right? The cells of the tissues are closely packed. Now why does it have to be closely packed? For example, let's take your skin. So what is it? It is an external covering. It's a covering. So if this covering is not closely packed, whatever contents that is found inside the body would leak out. So it has to be closely packed. Then cells of the epithelial tissue have both apical and basal surface, where apical surface remains free and the basal surface is attached to the basement membrane. So now I am not going to take the skin as an example because the skin comes under compound epithelial tissue. Right? First we need to learn about simple epithelial tissue. So this is how the epithelial tissue is. So you have something known as the basal membrane, basement membrane, and then you have the cells. Right? You have the basement membrane and then you have the cells. So here they say cells of epithelial tissue have both apical and basal surface. This top part is known as apical surface. This bottom part is known as basal surface, and it is attached to what? The basement membrane. So this part that you see over here is the basement membrane. Okay, right. There are no blood vessels present in the tissue. Tissue gets nutrients and oxygen from the underneath connective tissue. So now if you take this epithelium for example, you don't find any blood vessels that pierce the basement membrane and goes into each cell. There is no such thing like that. How does this epithelial tissue actually get its nutrients? It is through, now let's say there is a blood vessel that is below the basement membrane. Whatever oxygen and nutrients that is needed by this epithelial tissue will diffuse out of the blood vessels into the epithelial tissue. But you will never find a vessel that penetrates this basement membrane and go into this epithelial tissue. So now what do they say? This blood vessel is found in the underneath connective tissue. So a better way to explain a connective tissue would be, you can visualize the epithelial tissue, you can visualize the muscle tissue, you can visualize the nervous tissue, everything else is connective tissue. Okay, so now if you take your body, so outside you have the epithelial tissue. Inside, do you think everything is floating in air? Is it floating in water? No, it is floating in this connective tissue. There are various different types of connective tissue that can hold organs in place. That forms your fat. Indeed, blood is also a connective tissue. Just like that, underneath these epithelial cells, underneath this epithelial tissue, you have a connective tissue. In that connective tissue only blood vessels will travel. Then from that blood vessel, the oxygen and nutrients necessary would diffuse into the epithelium. Is that clear? Right. Then the functions: protection, secretion and absorption. So the first one would be pretty intuitive or easy to understand. Protection, barrier against mechanical injury, pathogens and barrier against fluid loss. So now if you have your skin, right, if you take a cane or something and hit yourself, the internal organs don't get damaged. Why? Because you have this skin to protect yourself. So the skin is made up of this epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue provides protection. Not only that, pathogens. Now why do we ask you to clean your wound? Whenever you have a wound, you always ask to clean it, do not expose it, cover it with a bandage. Why? If there is a break in the wound, bacteria or microorganisms can enter in the wound. So a break in the skin is like a break in the epithelium. If there is a break in the epithelium, these pathogens, organisms that cause diseases, are known as pathogens. These pathogens can enter through these breaks and infect you. So then this another protection function would be protection against pathogens. And like I previously said, barrier against fluid loss. If you take again your skin, it is tightly, you have tight junctions between the epitheliums. It will prevent water being lost from the inside of the body to the outside. Okay, so one function is protection. Then second one, secretion. Epithelial tissue is found in endocrine glands or glands that secrete hormones. So how does this function? If you take this epithelium, inside you have ribosomes. Ribosomes will secrete proteins. Proteins get packaged inside the Golgi apparatus. Golgi apparatus will then send it outside the cell. So it will get packaged and sent out. Eventually will come out of the epithelium. So these epithelial cells are important in secretion of hormones as well. So this same mechanism is followed in enzymes, hormones, mucus and sweat. All of these substances can be secreted by this epithelium. Then the third one, absorption. So the epithelium that is found inside the duodenum, jejunum, ileum, that is your small intestine, it is involved in absorption. Because whatever food or nutrients that you take in has to be absorbed inside your body, into your blood, and then from your blood into your cells. So the absorption that takes place from the lumen, so if this is the small intestine, right, the inside part is what you could call a lumen. So these nutrients should get absorbed across this lumen, eventually reach the bloodstream and then go all over your body. So here you will have an epithelium which is suitable for absorption. So different types of epithelial tissues are there, and different types of epithelial tissue will have different functions. But generally the functions of epithelial tissue can be put under these three: protection, secretion and absorption. There are two general types of epithelium. One is simple epithelium, the other one is compound epithelium. So over here you can see above the basement membrane, how many layers of cells can you see? One. If you can only see one cell layer, then it is simple epithelium. But if you could see multiple, then it could be compound epithelium. Right. Then close your views. Okay. Take 1 minute to write down whatever you remember and understand. It has to be written in your own words. You can't write it as same as it's in the textbook. Shahla. This is Saturtiga. You have 5 seconds. Okay, then that is enough time. Then let's take a look at the first example of simple epithelium. Right. Simple epithelium, simple squamous epithelium. It is a single layer with plate-like cells. This type of epithelium is thin and leaky. They are found in places where materials exchange by diffusion. So now you should be able to draw this, by the way. This is an important diagram given in your textbook. So this diagram you need to know. Again, when I showed you the epithelium structure, this is how I drew the cells. But like I told you, there are different types of epithelia in different locations. So this simple squamous epithelium actually has plate-like cells. Plate means flat, thin, plate-like cells. Why are they necessary? They are found in locations where exchange of materials are very important. One is blood vessels, the other one is alveoli. So let's take an example where you find both together. Where do you find both together? Inside the lungs, right? So now I'm going to draw an alveoli. Here you have an alveoli, and very close or in close proximity to the alveoli you have large number of blood vessels or blood capillaries like this. Okay. Why did I draw it in two colors? Yes, one gets oxygenated, the other one gets deoxygenated. Let's see whether you remember your O levels. The blood that comes to the lung, is it oxygenated or deoxygenated? If it is oxygenated, why does it need to go to the right? Okay, deoxygenated. Deoxygenated usually we denote it in blue color. So the blood is actually traveling in this direction. Okay, right. So the blood is traveling in this direction and coming out oxygenated blood. So when you take a deep breath in, the alveoli fills up with a higher amount of oxygen. So this oxygen needs to go from the alveoli to the blood vessels. So imagine instead of having this simple squamous epithelium, you had the epithelium that you find in the skin. Now imagine I take you, right? I peel off her skin. I peel off her skin and make it like a balloon, and I try to blow the balloon. Will the balloon inflate? No, it's a very hard, thick, impermeable substance. The skin is. So you can't put an epithelium like that over here. So the best type of epithelium that you would put here would be this simple squamous epithelium. So what happens? The oxygen would go from the alveoli into the blood, and from the blood the carbon dioxide will go into the alveoli. Okay, so what facilitates this? The fact that you have simple squamous epithelium in the alveoli and simple squamous epithelium in the blood capillaries. Okay, right. Then, second one, simple cuboidal epithelium. In simple cuboidal epithelium, it is a single cell layer with dice-shaped cells. Dice is a cube. Okay, that's why it's called cuboidal. The height, the length, the width, all are Same. So that's why it's called a cuboid. So simple cuboidal epithelium. Specialized for secretion. It is found in kidney tubules, many glands such as thyroid gland and salivary gland. So thyroid gland, why? Thyroid gland secretes thyroid hormones. So for the secretion of thyroid hormones, it is easy if you have this simple cuboid epithelium. Just like that, salivary glands. For the secretion of saliva, you require this simple cuboidal epithelium. So thyroid gland secretes thyroid hormone, salivary gland secretes saliva. Kidney tubules, what does it secrete? If you remember the structure of a nephron, right? You have the the cup-shaped Bowman's capsule, glomerulus. The Bowman's capsule will become the proximal convoluted tubule, descending limb, loop, ascending limb, distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct. Do you know that in that cup, right? In this cup, filtration takes place. But does all the bad things get filtered at that location? Yes. No. That's the thing. No. Some of the compounds that need to be eliminated from your body is not filtered here. So they have to be actively secreted into your blood. Into your kidney tubule. So now if you take for example, let's say you have the blood vessels around the kidney tubules like this. Okay? The blood first gets filtered at the Bowman's capsule and then goes around the kidney tubules and goes away. We are not going to talk about the osmoregulation part yet, we are just for an introduction. Okay? So now, in this filtration process, some of the waste products do enter this kidney tubule. Now what is the purpose of entering this kidney tubule? Such that it goes through this collecting duct, going into the ureter, to the bladder and then urethra to the outside. So all the bad things should be sent outside. Okay. However, some of the bad things remain in the blood. Then these substances will go from the blood into the kidney tubule. So if you draw the blood like this, if you draw the blood vessel like this, and you have the kidney tubules like this, here you have the epithelium. The epithelium that makes up the kidney tubules. What was the epithelium? Simple cuboid. Right? These waste substances will go from the blood into the extracellular space. Then from that space it will go into the epithelium. That epithelium is a simple cuboidal. And then this simple cuboidal will secrete that into the lumen. That means the space inside the tubule. If it is secreted into the lumen, it will go along the lumen. It goes along the lumen all the way out into the collecting duct, ureter, bladder, urethra into the outside. So this is where kidney tubules come into play for the secretion part. Okay? So the three things that are where you find simple cuboidal epithelium would be kidney tubules, many glands such as thyroid gland and salivary gland. Is that clear? Okay. Then so then won't everything spill out from simple squamous epithelium? I am assuming you are referencing to the alveoli. The thing is, when you are talking about this diffusion, fluid from the blood does not go into the alveoli. It is the gas, oxygen gas, diffuses into the blood, dissolves in the plasma. Then the carbon dioxide that is dissolved in the plasma will go into the alveoli and become gas. So once we do the respiratory structure, I will go in detail. But keep in mind, it is not fluid getting exchanged. It is these gases. Okay? Right. Then the next one is simple columnar epithelium. It is a single layer with large and brick shaped cells. As you can see, this is cuboidal shape. This one is columnar shape, like a cylinder. Right. Brick shaped cells. It is often found in places where secretion or active absorption is important. So in intestinal lining, both secretion of intestinal enzymes and absorption of nutrients take place. So these places where both secretion and absorption takes place, you can find this epithelium. That is simple columnar epithelium. Based on the shape of these cells is how they have given the name. Right. Next one. Pseudostratified columnar epithelium. What does it mean by pseudo? Fake. Stratified. Stratified means layered. Columnar, brick shape. Epithelium, epithelium. Fake, layered, brick shaped epithelium. Now, if you take a look at this, we saw that there are two main types of epithelium. What was it? Simple epithelium and compound epithelium. What was the main factor that determined whether something is a simple epithelium or compound epithelium? Presence of a single cell layer means it is simple epithelium. So, if I remove the pseudo part, stratified columnar epithelium, can it be a simple epithelium? No. But this is a simple epithelium because it is fake layered columnar. So now why do we say it as fake layered columnar epithelium? It is because of this. Take a look at columnar epithelium. All the cells are approximately the same size. Okay. Take a look at this. Some are long, some are short. Some are long, some are short. Not only that, take a look at the nucleus in the simple columnar. Nucleus are all on the same level. Yes? Take a look at the nucleus in the pseudo-stratified columnar. You have a nucleus here, nucleus here, nucleus here, nucleus here, nucleus here, nucleus here. Now, how did they even figure out that this was the structure? By looking at it through a microscope. So in a microscope, do you think it will look like this very clearly? No. The things that you mainly focus on when you look at a microscope would be the nuclei. So over here, the nuclei seem to be in different levels. And we know that an epithelial cell has one nuclei. So if the nuclei were on different levels, we would assume that there were multiple layers. But in reality, does it have multiple layers? No. It is a single layered epithelium. It gives a fake layeredness due to the presence of nuclei in different heights and cells of different heights. That is why it is known as pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium. Okay. In many vertebrates, this epithelium has ciliated cells. Ciliated cells are these hair-like extensions that you see from the epithelial cells. Okay. So now what is the purpose of these ciliated cells? They form a mucous membrane and the cilia help to move the mucus along the surface. So this pseudo-stratified squamous, why have they kept it as squamous? This is wrong. This pseudo-stratified columnar, okay? This is from the textbook itself. It is not pseudo-stratified squamous, it is pseudo-stratified columnar. Right. So in pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium, you find this in the respiratory passages in humans or in vertebrates. So respiratory passages, why is it important? Now, how many of you have done this? Don't lie, okay? Every single fellow would have done it. Some in front of others, some without, in your own space in your washroom. Right. So now why do you do that? Because something is stuck. You feel like some mucus is stuck and you need to spit it out. That is mucus escalation. Now once you are breathing in, do you only breathe in oxygen? Do you have a filter in your nose? No. You breathe in oxygen, carbon dioxide, soot, petroleum, so many different things in the atmosphere is going inside, including dust. Now, can you get oxygen from dust? Then should it go all the way to the alveoli? No. These dust and unnecessary particles can get stuck on this mucus layer. So if you take a look at the trachea and then the bronchi, let's just look at the trachea first. So this pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium would be found like this. And on top of that layer, that means on top of that layer, you will have a layer of mucus. Okay, in the respiratory passage. So what does this mucus do? This mucus is sticky. It will not allow any soot particles or any dust particles to go further down into the lungs. So they will get attached in this position. That is where the cilia comes into play. So the cilia will be present like this, and then there's that would slowly sweep the mucus up. This mucus would be swept up all the way until your esophagus. At that point, now you know you have a common part for the digestive system and the respiratory system. What is that common part? Pharynx. So then this will be swept up to the pharynx, and from the pharynx you have two options. One is, the other one is, so both happen. That process is known as mucus escalation, and the cilia plays a part in that. Okay? Right. So it is found in the nasal passage and the trachea. So then, take 1 minute, write everything you know about simple epithelium. Start by first classifying it, and then small characteristic where it is found. Don't look at the board. Okay, 1 minute is done. Yes, 1 minute is done. You should not try to rewrite everything that you can remember. You should write it in your own words, force yourself to think. That is the purpose of that exercise. Okay. Now we will be moving on to compound epithelium. So in compound epithelium, they have given us two examples. One is stratified squamous epithelium, the other one is transitional epithelium. But they have only gone into detail regarding this stratified squamous epithelium. Okay, so you just need to know the two examples of compound epithelia are stratified squamous and transitional. Right. Then stratified squamous. Stratified, layered, squamous, plate-like cells. So this will have many layers of plate-like cells. Okay. This tissue is composed of a number of layers of cells. So as you can see, this is the basement membrane. So let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Almost 8 layers are there. This epithelium regenerates rapidly. Cell division produces new cells near the basement membrane. So if you take this stratified squamous epithelium, this stratified squamous epithelium is found in places where you undergo a lot of abrasion. Abrasion means like that. So that is why the palms are quite rough. But more than your palms, what is rougher? Feet. Your feet. So if you take a pin, I'm not sure whether you all have done this, but I have for sure taken a pin, sent it through one side and taken it out through the. You have done? Yes. Do you feel the pain? Does it feel good? Yes, that's why we do it. If not, you won't do it. Right. So the epithelium that is found in that location is stratified squamous. Now why is it thicker there? Because it is subjected to abrasion a lot. You're always standing on your feet. If you start walking on your hands, then your hands will be like your feet. Okay? Right. Cell division produces new cells near the basement membrane. So now if this is constantly subjected to this friction, abrasion, the top layer of cells will come out. If the bottom layer does not produce new cells, eventually all the cell layers will be removed. That is why the bottom cells continuously produces new cells by mitosis. So even if the top cells are removed, the bottom cells continuously produce new ones. Is that clear? Right. The old cells are sloughed off and replaced by the new cells. Sloughed off means removed. This epithelium is found on surfaces where they are subjected to abrasion. Abrasion means friction, such as outer skin, lining of the mouth, anus and vagina. All of these places are subjected to abrasion. And since they are subjected to abrasion, they have this stratified squamous epithelium. Now, like I said, imagine you have simple squamous epithelium in your hand. All the things will leak out. So that's not good. Right. So then epithelial tissue is done. So 1 out of the 4 tissues are over. The other one is connective tissue. This tissue might be a little bit more difficult to understand, but we will try. Okay. Connective tissues are the most abundant tissues in the body that help to connect organs and tissues together structurally and functionally. So let's draw a human. Right? So if you draw a human, you know that the epithelium is the coverings. So you will find the epithelium here. Right? The epithelium is the covering. You will find the epithelium throughout. But does the epithelium are the epithelium only found in the outer surfaces? No, the inner free surfaces also you will find. So you would find it inside the esophagus, stomach, intestine, and eventually rectum. So all of these places you will find epithelium. Same way you will find epithelium in your respiratory tract also, but I am not going to talk about it. Then you will find muscles. You will find large number of muscles, especially if you take a man like me. Muscles everywhere. You don't find muscles there. but here you will put 6 packs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 total. Right, so all of these places you have muscle tissue. Then what else is remaining? Nervous tissue. Let's draw the nervous tissue. Again, nervous tissue, let's start with the brain. Okay, then you have the spinal cord, then you have the nerves. Right. So what you can understand by this is, my brain is very big. Okay. Now, can you see a lot of empty spaces? Can? That empty spaces are filled by connective tissue. That is connective tissue, right? So the different ways these organs and tissues are connected with each other. You can have blood as a type of a connective tissue because blood is filling the space, no? The only thing is the blood is confined into these blood vessels, but it is still filling the spaces. Then let's take bones. Bones are also type of connective tissue. Bones also fill these spaces. Then fat. So now this person can't have fat because it is me. Let's take a fat person. A fat person will have a big belly. Adipose tissue. That is also a type of connective tissue. So with that you should be able to understand what a connective tissue is. It is something that is filling the gaps. Connecting each tissue type to a different tissue type. Connecting tissues to organs. That is a connective tissue. Now if you take connective tissues, you have different types of connective tissues. You have loose connective tissue, dense connective tissue, adipose tissue, blood, bone. All of these are different types of connective tissue. So now first we are going to talk about the general characteristics and functions, and then later we will be going into each individual type. Right. So now, connective tissues are the most abundant tissues in the body. Does that make sense? Because it is the one that is filling the gap, so therefore it is the most abundant tissue. That help to connect organs and tissues together structurally and functionally. So if you take blood, blood has a function. Okay? Bone also has a function. It is also important to maintain your structure. So these connective tissues are helping both structurally and functionally. These type of tissues consist of different types of cells scattered in a large amount of extracellular matrix. What does that mean? If I draw an epithelial tissue here, right? Epithelial tissue. Then here you have a muscle tissue. Then the muscle has nervous connection. What have I used for nerves? Blood. So the muscles will have nerves attached to it. Okay? Right. So each tissue is made up of a group of cells. So this epithelial tissue has cells, muscle tissue has cells, nervous tissue has neurons. Now, if something is found inside a cell, we call it intracellular. If something is found outside the cell, then we would call it extracellular. So these spaces that you see over here, what would you call that? Where is that space? Intracellular, extracellular? What is it? A space. It is called the extracellular space. Right. So now this extracellular space is the place where you have this connective tissue. So if nothing was there, it would be made up of nothing. No, there is air. But do you have air? No, you have some, either you have a fat layer or you have some kind of a sticky thing. But you have something in that extracellular space. That something is the connective tissue. Okay? Now that connective tissue, so tissue means what? A group of cells. So then that connective tissue, this area where you find a tissue, that tissue will have cells. Okay, so let's draw some cells. I will draw the cells in blue. So that tissue will have cells. Okay, right. Now, this is the connective tissue cell or cell that is found inside the connective tissue. Cell that is found inside the connective tissue. This is still considered as an extracellular space. Now, this extracellular space will be filled with proteins, fibers, all secreted by these tissue or secreted by these cells. So now the presence of these fibers and other types of proteins depending on the amount of fibers or proteins secreted, depending on the number of cells, this can be a liquid, it can be a solid, it can be a semi-solid. Not semi-solid technically, like a solid, like your nose. Take your nose. You can do this with your nose, no? Solids usually are, you can't change their shape. But if you take your nose, you can change the shape. The nose is also made up of a type of connective tissue, cartilage. So it is not a complete solid. Okay, right. So then these fibers and proteins will determine the consistency, whether it is a solid, liquid or semi-solid. Okay. Liquid example would be your blood. Blood, specifically the plasma. We will come back to that later. Now did you understand connective tissue? Okay. So what are the types of fibers, proteins and other things that are found inside this connective tissue? They have mentioned semi-solid, jelly like. Never mind. Extracellular matrix. Cells, extracellular space. Now if that space is filled with fibers and proteins, you don't call it a space anymore, you call it a matrix. Have you studied extracellular matrix before? Yes. What is the main protein found in the extracellular matrix? Collagen. Very good. You are studying for the first term. That is right. Okay. Matrix may be a semi-solid, liquid or solid. So what are the different types of cells that can be found in this connective tissue? Fibroblasts. Fibroblasts secrete fibers. Macrophages. Macrophages engulf foreign particle or any cells by phagocytosis. What is phagocytosis? Engulf them. So phagocytosis is this. So let's say that I am a macrophage. So they have given macrophage. So these are white blood cells, but they don't have legs though. They slowly come. And then that bottle will be broken down and the contents from the bottle will be used for the macrophages. Okay? So that is phagocytosis. Okay. So you have fibroblasts, macrophages, mast cells. What do mast cells do? Heparin and histamine. Heparin is an anticoagulant. Okay, anticoagulant means prevents the blood from coagulating. Coagulating means if you cut your hand, after a while, for a while it will bleed. After that it will form that wound, right? Underneath that wound you will have a clot. That clot is formed by the blood. So clotting is known as coagulation. Removing the clot or preventing clotting is known as anticoagulation. Again, we will learn this in circulatory system, but for you to remember it from now onwards, I am giving a small introduction. So heparin is used for that. Okay. Histamine. Histamine is an inflammatory mediator. This molecule can induce or stimulate inflammation. Okay. So far 3 cells. Fibroblast, it's right there in the name, fibro, so fiber production. Macrophages, I don't think you will forget that example. Phagocytosis. Mast cells, heparin and histamine. So in addition to these cells, you can find fat cells. Fat cells, storage and insulation. So now who am I kidding? I am actually a bit fat, I would say. Right? So I have a lot of fat stored around my body. This fat will help me to stay warm. Right? Like how you're putting bed sheet, you have an additional layer. Just like that, I have an additional layer. Not only that, now all of a sudden the world is in a food shortage. So let's take you and me. Who will survive longer without food? Probably me, because I am a lot fatter. Okay? So it is important in both storage and insulation. One thing you need to remember is that different types of cells are found in different types of connective tissues. So these fat cells might not be found in all the connective tissues. Okay? Right. Then leukocytes. Leukocytes mean white blood cells. So white blood cells function is protection. You know that from grade 6. Are found in some connective tissues. So far how many types of cells? Fibroblasts, macrophages, mast cells, fat cells, leukocytes. Okay? Right. So we saw that these fibroblasts secrete fibers. What are the types of fibers that are secreted? Collagen, reticular fibers and elastic fibers. So let's take a look at collagen fibers. Collagen fibers provide strength and flexibility. So this collagen protein that we study in extracellular matrix, it is the most abundant type of protein in this extracellular matrix. This collagen is important in providing strength and flexibility. Reticular fibers join connective tissues to adjacent tissues. So this one is actually right. This part is known as the duodenum. Right? This duodenum is in contact with your abdominal wall on the posterior side or the back side. Okay? So this connection is not like the duodenum is fused with the wall. No. It is connected by connective tissues. The connective tissue will have fibers. The fiber that is involved in connecting these organs to adjacent tissues is this reticular fibers. Okay? Another example that you can understand would be like this. Your liver is made up of liver cells. Okay? Now these individual liver cells, how did they make up this organ? What makes them stay together? Right? In between these liver cells, you have these extracellular spaces, which is made up of these connective tissue. So now imagine these reticular fibers like this. You take a bowl, right? You take a bowl. You take a bowl and you just drop in liver cells. Some of these liver cells will be present here, some will be here, some will be here, some will be here, some here. Majority of them here because of gravity, but some of them will be here. Right? Imagine reticular fibers like a cobweb, a web that is formed by spiders. Right? Now if you drop the liver cells, they will come and occupy these spaces and they will organize themselves into a nice pattern or in a proper manner. So this cobweb is the reticular fibers. So reticular fibers are important for keeping these organs together. It is also important in connecting organs with adjacent tissues. Okay? So that is where reticular fibers join connective tissues to adjacent tissues. Then you have elastic fibers. It is to make your tissue elastic. Elasticity does not mean the ability to stretch. It is the ability to stretch and come back to its normal size. That is elasticity. Okay, so if you take your skin can be stretched and then comes back to the normal stage. That means there are elastic fibers underneath the skin in the connective tissue. Okay, right. So 3 fibers are collagen, reticular and elastic fibers. Then functions, binding and structural support. Like we saw, filling up the gaps, making sure the organs are staying in place. Binding and structural support. Protection, you have these where macrophages, leukocytes are found in the connective tissue. So they can engulf these pathogens or foreign organisms, hence providing protection. Transport of materials, which person? Blood. Insulation, fat. That will come soon, no? Fat, okay. So now, take a moment, 1 minute to write down the, wait, there's one more part. Different types of connective tissue, loose connective tissue, fibrous connective tissue, adipose, blood, cartilage and bone. Each of them will be discussed in a bit more detail. So don't worry about it. Write down whatever you understood in your own words. Don't try to write down what you remember. We are not testing your short-term memory. We are testing your understanding. Online students, you all are able to see the projected screen clearly, right? If you are done, then I think you have 10 seconds left.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Okay, then we will move on. Right. First thing that we are going to look at is the loose connective tissue. Right? This tissue is the most widely distributed connective tissue in the vertebrate body. This tissue can be found everywhere. Right? I'm going to show you a picture of a dead body. Right? Can you see this person? Okay? The diagram view is actually like this. So the mouth is here. So they are looking from this side. Okay? Ignore all of this poor wire management. We will take a look at this. You can see the skin, the lips, right? So that lips is here. Now what have they done? They have removed the skin. Once you remove the skin, what can you see? This yellow color thing, right? That subcutaneous layer, that means cutaneous means the skin, sub means below, subcutaneous layer means below the skin. You're trying to just complicate it. Below the skin, you see this yellow color thing, right? That subcutaneous layer is made up of two things. One is fat, the other one is areolar connective tissue. Adipose tissue and areolar connective tissue. So that areolar connective tissue, as you can see, is widely distributed. Throughout your entire body, you cut open, you don't cut open, okay? In a cadaver, that means a dead person, you cut open, you would see these yellow color things. That is areolar connective tissue. This is not only found beneath the skin, by the way, it is found around organs, in between organs. So, as you can see, this areolar connective tissue is found everywhere. That is why it is the most widely distributed connective tissue. Right. If you are planning to go to medicine, you can't at this images because you will have to cut the cadaver in real life, but I didn't cut. I didn't like the smell. They preserve it in formalin that will burn your eyes and like burn your throat, so like you drinking alcohol. I haven't drunk alcohol, so I don't know. But it's like you drank alcohol, the throat and all will burn. So some days they just take, now after a long holiday, they will just take the body out after the preservation and keep it on the tables, can't stay inside. So I never cut. I went to mark my attendance and I came out. Right. So then, now that yellow color thing we saw from outside, or when we are looking at it macroscopically, it's just yellow. But actually, it is made up of so many different types of cells and fibers. Let's take a look. Types of cells in this tissue are fibroblasts, macrophages, mast cells, leukocytes, and fat cells. I told you, fat cells are also present. All three types of fibers are found in this tissue. Look at this. Fibers are loosely arranged and wavy in nature. If these fibers were tightly arranged, you will not be able to move your skin like this. It would stick to your skin and not allow it to move. It will be rigid, but you can move it. Why? Because the fibers that are present in this connective tissue are loosely arranged and wavy. This tissue binds epithelium. I showed you it was below the skin, below the epithelium, and the underlying tissue, holding organs in place. This tissue is found under the skin and throughout the body. Shall I find an organ? Do you want to see an organ? No, okay. Right. So, what you need to know mainly, the different types of cells found: fibroblasts, macrophages, mast cells, leukocytes, and fat cells. And the fibers, all three fibers are found. How are they arranged? Loosely and wavy in nature. So, if you keep that in mind, that's enough. What gives that yellow color? I have no idea, probably the fat cells. Okay, fat is yellow in color. Then, loose connective tissue is done. Now we have fibrous connective tissues. Okay. This yellow color? Yeah, it's from the animals, vertebrates. Since we are similar to vertebrates, it is found in animals as well. Then, fibrous connective tissue, also known as dense connective tissue. This tissue is densely packed with collagen fibers, therefore the matrix is relatively reduced and contains fewer cells. So now if you take this as the collagen, I'll erase this, okay, this and this. So let's say this is the fibrous connective tissue. This fibrous connective tissue has few cells. Why does it have fewer cells? Because these few cells have secreted that much collagen such that there is no more space for more cells to be formed. Okay? So the matrix is relatively reduced. So like we saw previously, the things that are found outside the cells is filled with these fibers and proteins. In this case, the fibers fill up every single part of that space such that the extracellular space or the matrix is reduced. Okay, so this is why this dense or fibrous connective tissue will be found in places where you need a lot of strength and support. Examples would be tendons and ligaments. Tendons are these. The muscle is attached to the bone by a tendon. Bones are attached to bones by a ligament. Okay. Now, why does a muscle need to be attached to a bone? So, let's take my hand for example. My muscle would be here, right? At the end of my muscle, I would have this tendon. This tendon actually inserts onto a bone in my forearm. Not in here, it would insert to a bone in my forearm. Then, if my muscle is contracting, it will pull on the tendon. This tendon is found where? Past this joint. What is this joint? Elbow joint, right? Past the elbow joint. So if my muscle is contracting, it is pulling on the tendon found in the forearm. So that pull will cause me to pain. That is why you need a tendon. So if you have this tendon, do you think it needs to be very strong or weak? It needs to be very strong because you are constantly using your muscles even without you knowing. That is why in these tendons you would find this fibrous connective tissue. Now, this bone, or if you take this arm, is connected to the forearm, like you said correctly, to the elbow joint. In between these elbow joints, if you have the joints like this, right, if this is the arm and this is the forearm, these two bones are connected by multiple ligaments holding them in place. So they also need to be strong. So therefore they are found with fibrous connective tissue. Matrix is reduced, fewer number of cells but large number of collagen. Okay. Where tensile strength. Tensile strength means strength under tension. Then you can take a look. Ligaments and tendons. Then you have the consequence of all our favorite activities, adipose tissue. This tissue is packed with adipose cells. As you can see, what shown here, each of this is an adipose cell. Each adipose cell contains a large fat droplet. This clear part is the fat droplet. This is a specialized type of loose connective tissue which pads and insulates the body and stores fuel as fat molecules. So we saw this part, insulation and storing fuel. Because all the food that we eat, some of them get stored as fat. How does it get stored as fat? By forming the molecule triacyl glycerol. Have you heard of that molecule? Yes. So that triacyl glycerol is the storage form. That triacyl glycerol is the one found inside these adipose cells. So when you are starving for a long time, these triacyl glycerols will break down, release the fatty acids. Fatty acids can be used for energy. Do you remember in Unit 2, the last part, there was this big flow chart? Carbohydrates, other side protein and the other side fats. So fatty acids are also used for energy. Okay, so triacyl glycerol will be stored for energy. In addition, having an additional layer will keep you warm. Right. So this is adipose tissue. Then blood. It is a specialized connective tissue where the matrix is not secreted by the blood cells and fibers are formed only during blood clotting process. So we saw previously in these connective tissues, you had these extracellular spaces. In that extracellular spaces, your fibroblasts, all the cells that were found inside these connective tissue, produced that protein, produced that fiber to fill in that space to form that matrix. That point is clear? Right. However, in blood, the matrix is not secreted by the blood cells. So the matrix would be the extracellular part. That this extracellular part, the fibers, proteins were secreted by these cells in the previous connective tissue examples. But for blood, these blood cells do not secrete the plasma. They do not secrete the fibrin. Red blood cell is a separate entity. That is why it is a specialized connective tissue. The extracellular part, now if you take blood, this is a nice picture. If you take blood, you see these red blood cells and then you see this orange color fluid, right? So that is the matrix. That orange color fluid is the extracellular part. If you take red blood cells, it is intracellular. Outside the red blood cells would be extracellular. That extracellular is this orange color thing. This fluid is not produced by these red blood cells. The fibers that are found are not produced by the red blood cells. One special thing about the fibers in blood is that these fibers only form during blood clotting. So now, in my body right now, I don't have any injury. So I won't find any fibers. But if I cut myself, blood clotting takes place and then fibers form. So now what are these fibers? If you take a blood vessel, right? If you take a blood vessel, I introduce an injury and the blood vessel got cut. If the body did not have a repair mechanism for this cut in the blood vessel, for every small injury we have to go to the hospital, right? But we do have a protective mechanism. What is that protective mechanism? The damage to the blood vessel, first a type of cell known as the platelets will come and cover this area. Okay, platelet will cover that area. However, this platelet alone, so now I am going to expand and draw it here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This platelet alone is not enough to stop the blood from leaking out through that damage. Then what should happen? Fibers should form between these platelets like this. No, black color. Sorry, blue color. You mean the scab? No, scab is different. Actually, if you had a pimple, right? You break a pimple, blood will come. After some time, the blood stops coming and it is a dark red, that is the clot. Okay? That clot contains this platelet, this fiber. The fiber forms a crisscross pattern acting like a net. That net will prevent the blood from going out like this. Can you visualize it? So that net will prevent the blood from going out. This blue color thing is the fiber. That is only formed during the blood clotting process. If it is formed all the time, this might create a blood clot in an unnecessary location. Therefore, you will damage your, now if it happens in the heart, you will have heart attack. Okay? Right. That is why it's a special connective tissue. The cells don't produce the matrix and fibers are only formed during blood clotting process. The extracellular matrix, like I told you, is called plasma. The blood plasma contains salts, water. What is the main thing the plasma is made up of? No, no, no. Red blood cells is different. Plasma is different. Red blood cells and other cells plus the plasma together blood. Red blood cells, plasma, blood. Okay? Cells, matrix, tissue. Red blood cells, plasma, blood. So now tell me, is the red blood cell the plasma? No. Right. What is the plasma mainly made up of? Very good. Water. Okay. Right. The blood plasma contains salts, sodium, chloride, potassium, whatever that is dissolved, it will be found. Water and dissolved proteins, albumin, globulin, whatever proteins that are found is found in that plasma. Okay. The blood plasma contains that. Then what about the cellular components? The red blood cells transport respiratory gases, oxygen. White blood cells involved in defense against foreign material. Platelets involved in blood clotting. These are suspended in the blood plasma. That means they are floating around in the blood plasma. Okay. Main functions of blood tissue include transport of materials, defense and osmoregulation. Transport of materials because plasma is also involved in transport. How? It is involved in transport of proteins. Red blood cells are also involved in transport because it transports oxygen. Defense due to the presence of white blood cells. Osmoregulation is maintaining the solute concentration inside the plasma. Okay, this one we will cover under the final part of Unit 5. Unit 5 part 1. That means the end of your grade 12 syllabus only we have this system, osmoregulation and excretion. I will cover that then. For now just remember the functions, transport of materials, defense and osmoregulation. Regulation of osmolarity. Osmolarity means solute concentration. So regulating solutes is also done in the blood. Okay. So that is blood tissue. Okay, we have two more, cartilage and bone. Right. Yes, I told you, no? Did I teach you all? Hemophilia. Did I tell you all? You all did this in O level, right? Hemophilia. Yes, there is a condition where your blood doesn't clot properly. Hemophilia. Hemophilia, for clotting, you need certain proteins and compounds known as clotting factors. In hemophilia, you don't have a specific clotting factor. So even for small minor injuries, you will bleed out a lot. So there was this one story that there was this boy, it mainly affects males. There was this boy who had hemophilia. He was 7 years old. Apparently, he has a dream. The dream is to ride a bicycle. You all also have dreams, but those are extravagant dreams. His hemophiliac dream was to ride a bicycle. Now, why was it his dream to ride a bicycle? Because his parents did not allow him to ride a bicycle. Because riding a bicycle means you will fall. So now, have you all watched Batman? Guessing that Alfred will say, no, why do we fall, Bruce? It is to learn to pick ourselves back up. But there is no picking that boy back up, because if he falls, then he will start bleeding heavily. So what has happened? He has gone to a tuition class. I think grade 3. Not sure. 8 is grade 3. Okay, whatever. He went to a class, and then his friend came in a bicycle. So then what do you think happened? He took the friend's bicycle, rode it, and fell. So once he fell, what did he do? He didn't tell anybody. He told the friend to not to tell anybody. Friend is also an 8-year-old boy, no? What does he know about hemophilia? So he also didn't tell anybody. So he has gone home. Parents have come pick him up and he has gone home and he has a stomach. He did not come. He had a stomachache, but he did not complain. Why? Mother will ask, how did you get the stomachache? And then he can't say, he went bicycle riding, because then the repercussion is worse, is what he thought. Okay? So then he didn't tell. Eventually, the pain became so bad that he couldn't act. So he then told his mother, this is what happened. Then what did and then took him to the hospital. Too late. Internal bleeding and the child died. Yeah, so that is hemophilia. Then we will learn cartilage. So you have to be thankful for what you have, no? No? That is such a selfish way of thinking. Right? Being thankful for what we have. So then the person who has hemophilia should be unthankful for what he has. Should he blame someone? No. That is nature. He got bad luck. Can't help it. Being thankful for what we have, because we look at another person suffering, is the most selfish thing we can do. I saw one status going around where a child was, I think it was a story about a child with a cancer called retinoblastoma. Big caption and all put. Last part is, I have to be very thankful. We are thinking about small things. These fellows are thinking about big things. I have to be very thankful to what I have gotten. That is a selfish way of thinking. What about that child? What about the child's parents? Should they also be thankful? So if you are saying that you should be thankful, they should be insulting somebody, no? So if the same person or entity that we are thankful for, that person should scold. So that is such a selfish way of thinking. Some people are dealt bad hands. We can't do anything about it. If we stop to think about every single person, then we will have to wallow in our own sorrows. This is not a philosophy class. Let's learn about cartilage. Right. Cartilage, this tissue consists of a matrix composed of chondroitin sulfate. So what is this chondroitin sulfate? Again, very easy. We will draw some cells and the remaining part is the matrix. Right? Chondrocytes. These are the cells that are found inside this connective tissue. These chondrocytes secrete this substance known as chondroitin sulfate and the collagen fibers. So these cells will secrete this chondroitin sulfate and the collagen fibers. So the matrix will be containing both these chondroitin sulfate and these collagen fibers. So this chondroitin sulfate is a protein carbohydrate rubbery complex. So then the places where you find this cartilage also, it will be a bit flexible and it will be strong as well. Both strength and flexibility is given due to the presence of this chondroitin sulfate and collagen fibers. So here they have only given trachea and intervertebral disc, but easy to understand would be this. Touch and see. Feel it. Feel the flexibility. Right. So that is cartilage. So where do you find this? In the trachea and the intervertebral discs. Intervertebral disc is the, if you have two vertebra, the backbone, in between the two vertebra you have this layer known as the intervertebral disc made up of cartilage. We will learn this in Unit 5 Part 2 under support and movement. Now we don't need to discuss. However, trachea, if you take your trachea, right, if you take your trachea, there is cartilage enclosed in the trachea. So around the trachea you will have a cartilage. Okay. Now the reason why you need to find this cartilage is, how many of you have had trouble when they moved on from plastic straws to paper straws? We have had trouble, no? Now if you take a Milo, right, trying to insert the paper straw into that hole, my God, might as well make myself a Milo. Right? Now after you put the paper straw, now nobody wants to drink and move on with their life, no? Just walking and then so slowly like that, no, you want to drink. So when you drink, it will get wet, your saliva also goes onto the straw, and then what happens? The paper straw that was like this will eventually become like this, and then when you do, collapsed. No Milo comes. Quarter of the Milo, now you have to put in the dustbin, now you have to go and do like that. That is relevant to the trachea, by the way. Trachea also same thing. Air is going in, air is coming out. So when you are breathing in, the trachea will expand, allowing air to go in. When you are breathing out, trachea will constrict due to the pressure changes. We will learn this in respiratory system. Now, if you did not have the cartilage, when you are breathing in, it will expand. When you are breathing out, it will collapse. There you go. You can't breathe out. You can breathe in, you can't breathe out. That is why you have this cartilage around the trachea. So when you are breathing in, it will slowly expand. When you are breathing out, it will slowly constrict, but it will still keep the airway patent and open. Okay? Right, so that is cartilage. So here I have shown you this cartilage is found in the covering of bones. That is also true. But if they ask you an example, trachea and intervertebral discs. Okay? Right. Then the last connective tissue we have is the bone. Right, bone. It is a mineralized connective tissue. Why do we say mineralized? Because in the matrix you will contain minerals, calcium, phosphate, inorganic salts like that. You can find these minerals inside this matrix. Okay, mineralized connective tissue. Matrix consists of collagen fibers and inorganic salts. Due to the presence of these inorganic salts is why you would call it a mineralized connective tissue. Inorganic salts are calcium, magnesium and phosphate. So those three you need to know. Calcium, magnesium, phosphate. Cells are osteoblasts. So again you know the same pattern. You have the cells and then you have the matrix. In here the cells are osteoblasts. Matrix is inorganic salts and collagen fibers. Cells are osteoblasts and osteocytes. Osteocytes are enclosed within lacunae. Now let's take a look at the structure of the bone. Again, this diagram not important, not important, not important, not important, not important. Epithelial tissue diagrams all are important because these were not taken from the textbook. These were taken from the internet. Just to give you an visualizing. So again, this diagram however is important. You need to draw it exactly like that. I'm kidding. You don't have to draw this. This is also not important. Now, so now we are taking a look at this. See this entire skeletal system. What is this? Connective tissue. This entire thing is connective tissue. Right? So what have they done? They have taken a part of the hip bone, and then the hip bone is made up of bone, so they took that outer part of that bone and they are looking at it. So when they took that outer part of their bone, right? So how is this? What is this structure? So this is the inner part. This is the outer part. Okay? Is that clear? Right. This is the inner part, this is the outer part. Again, not important. Just for you to get an idea about these lacunae, osteocytes, osteoblasts and osteons. Now, take a look at this diagram. Okay, not very clear on this, but you can see there is a circular pattern. That circular pattern is known as concentric. This is known as concentric. This pattern is known as concentric. Concentric. Right? Clear? Then they took that concentric part out and they have expanded it like this. Up to that point, is it okay? Fine. Now what are they doing? In that concentric layer, they are looking at a specific location. Right. Now, what is this? What does it look like? A nuclei, no? So then this is a cell. What is this cell? This cell is the osteocyte. This osteocyte is found or enclosed by a lacunae. Lacunae is an empty space that is found inside this bone. Okay, so if this is the lacunae, okay, this hole was found inside the bone. If this is the lacunae, the osteocyte is present like this. Okay, clear? Right. Here you have the lacunae. The osteocytes are present inside the lacunae. Alright. Then outside the osteocyte, that means outside the cell, what do you have? The matrix. So then these are the matrix. Now is this matrix liquid? No. What is the special thing about this matrix? It is rigid, yes. What is it made up of? Solid, yes. What are the things that make up this solid? Collagen and inorganic salts. So these are very strong, rigid matrix. That is the bone that you feel. That's the watch by. That is the bone that you feel. That inorganic salt. Okay, inorganic salt, the collagen fibers, the calcium, magnesium, phosphates, all of it are found inside this matrix. That matrix is the hard part of your bone. Okay, right. Now, why is this relevant to our part? Take a look. Cells, what are the different types of cells? Osteoblasts and osteocytes. What did we see now? We saw osteocytes. What are osteoblasts? Now, if you look at this concentric pattern, in this concentric pattern, these osteocytes were closer to the center. Yes or no? Right. Osteoblasts are cells that are found closer to the edge of this circular pattern. Right? So, if you have this circular pattern, osteocytes are found closer to the center, osteoblasts are found closer to the edge. Why is that? Now this concentric layer, instead of just calling it a concentric pattern, let's give it a name. That name is osteon. This circular pattern thingy that you see here is known as an osteon. So how many osteons can you count? Multiple osteons. Okay, right. So in that osteon, closer to the center you will find osteocyte. Closer to the edge you will find osteoblast. Now, this osteoblast is known as bone forming cells. Osteocytes maintain bone tissue. So now, where do you get these osteocytes from? You see this osteoblast found at the edge of this concentric layer or the edge of this osteon. What do they do? These osteoblasts start producing the matrix. The cells only produce the matrix, no? So the cells start producing the matrix. So once they start producing the matrix, what happens? So now this is not the only place you will find an osteocyte, osteoblast. You will find osteoblast here, 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 here. So they continuously produce the matrix, creating another layer. Yes? So these layers continuously form, and eventually the osteoblast that was at the outermost layer will now be more towards the center as new layers are forming. Now these osteoblasts will eventually become the osteocytes. Once these osteoblasts are embedded in their own matrix, it is known as osteocytes. Not relevant to A-level syllabus, but easy for you to remember these two cells. Okay, they are not the same. Okay, osteoblasts are important for bone forming cells. Osteocytes, mature bone cells that maintain bone tissue. So when a person is continuously exercising, doing some sports, their bones will be under continuous stress. That stress will be detected by osteocytes, causing them to increase the thickness of the bone. Okay, that's what they mean by regulate the bone or maintain the bone tissue. Okay. Osteocytes are enclosed within the lacunae. Do you remember the lacunae? It is the pocket found inside what? Inside the osteon. So in this specific location, you will have that pocket. So that pocket is known as lacunae. Inside that pocket, you will find osteocyte. Then this concentric layered structure is known as the osteon. So then what are the new terms we learned? Osteoblasts, osteocytes, osteon, lacunae. So you know each term now. Okay. The mammalian hard bone has repeating units called osteons. Here, repeating units called osteons. If you look at the image in your tube, you can see it clearly. Each osteon has concentric layers of mineralized materials. At the center of the osteon is a central canal containing blood vessels and nerves. That is also shown in the diagram. At the center of the osteon only, you will have the blood vessels and nerves. This tissue forms the endoskeleton of most vertebrates and providing support and strength. Endoskeleton means found inside your body. And again, most vertebrates, not all vertebrates. There are different types of endoskeleton which we will learn again under Unit 5 Part 2. What is the function of the bone? Support and strength. Right. If you look at it technically, your brain and the spinal cord is the only actual living part. It's like the CPU controlling the monitor, mouse. CPU controls the mouse. Yes, no? Because mouse has to, I haven't used a computer in a long time, I use this. Right? Forget about computers, I have no knowledge in that. Let's use the human body example itself. So your brain thinks and your body does. So technically your brain and your spinal cord is inside an armor made up of meat, flesh and bones. It's just a way to induce your curiosity so that you would love biology and get good marks. So with that, connective tissue is done. Take 5 minutes, write about whatever you remember and understand from connective tissue. Start by listing down the different types of connective tissue, what are the components in each connective tissue and the functions. Those are the main parts. Take 5 minutes and do it. Open the tube and see what you have missed. And then we will continue. Raza, Ramesh, can you see the concentric part? Okay. Inside that concentric part, you will have the blood vessel at the center as shown. Okay. Then inside that concentric layer only you have that pocket known as the lacunae. Inside that lacunae you will have your osteocyte. Online students, any questions? Okay, lacunae, like I showed you, this concentric part, what do you call it? You call it the osteon. Inside that osteon, there is a pocket, hole, empty space. In that empty space, you have put the osteocyte. So this lacunae encloses the osteocyte. So if you take this, forget about the lacunae, it will be like a completely solid thing. But there are holes or small cavities present, and inside that small cavity you have this osteocyte. That small cavity which houses or holds the osteocyte is known as the lacunae. Concentric part known as the osteon. The cell inside the lacunae known as the osteocyte. Okay. Okay, I think that is 5 minutes. Right? Let's do muscle and nervous tissue. That is just 1.5 page, and then you can take a break. Okay. Right. Muscle tissue. Muscle tissue is responsible for movement. The cells in the muscle tissue are composed of actin and myosin. So what do they mean by muscle tissue is responsible for movement? Every single movement you do, there is a muscle behind it. So do a random movement that you think there would be no muscle. There is a muscle. Then, huh? Muscle. Muscle. So when you let's take the right eye for example, if you look it this way, it's medial rectus, lateral rectus. So muscles. Superior, inferior. Muscles. Then muscles. Muscles. Then muscles. Muscles. Every single thing is muscle. So muscle is responsible for movement. The cells in the muscle tissue are composed of actin and myosin proteins. These actin and myosin are the one that is involved in contraction. Okay? Actin and myosin are the ones involved in contraction. The arrangement of actin and myosin and how they do the contractions will be done much later. Okay? The tissue is able to contract and relax. So not only, now if it can only contract means you have to be like this all the time. Yes, because all the muscles will be in contraction. So it can contract, it can relax. Okay, there are 3 basic types of muscle tissues found in the vertebrate animal body. That would be the smooth muscle, skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle. Let's take a look at the smooth muscle cells. So I can zoom in more. Is enough. Let's take a look at the smooth muscle cells. The cells of the smooth muscles are spindle shaped. Take a look at the shape. That is known as spindle. It is spindle shaped and uninucleated. Uninucleated means how many nuclei per cell? 1 nuclei per cell. Right. Then cells lack striations. What are these striations? Take a look at these skeletal muscles and cardiac muscles. You would see this thing as going cross around. Actually, wait a minute. Where is that? Here it seems like there is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 striations. That is wrong. Okay, this diagram is a bit inaccurate. Striations are throughout. You will find the striations. But for now, we'll look at this. That is a striation. This striation is due to the presence of something known as sarcomere. Sarcomere is a unit. Sarcomere is this. S-A-R-C-O-M-E-R-E. Sarcomere. This sarcomere is a special arrangement of actin and myosin proteins which will allow them to contract. So this sarcomere is present in skeletal muscles and it is present in cardiac muscles. This sarcomere is not present in smooth muscles. Is actin and myosin present in smooth muscles? Yes. Actin and myosin are present in smooth, cardiac and skeletal muscles. Sarcomere is present in cardiac and skeletal muscles. Sarcomere talks about the specific arrangement of actin and myosin. That arrangement of actin and myosin is found only in skeletal and cardiac. Right. Then, this tissue is responsible for involuntary body movements like churning of stomach, constriction of arteries. Churning of stomach would be, now when you eat something, your stomach will contract and relax, contract and relax, contract and relax, mixing the food, breaking down the food and then sending them into the small intestine. Now when you eat, The only thing that you can control would be what you put in and what you put out. Yes, you can control your eating and you can control your defecating, but that is all you can control. The gap happens naturally. So now once you take a meal and once you swallow it, you go like, and do you voluntarily press the esophagus, stomach, small intestine? No. But this region you voluntarily present, and behind also you can voluntarily present. Voluntarily contract. Okay? However, whatever that is found in the between is involuntary. Involuntary mechanisms are found in smooth muscles. Okay? These smooth muscles will line your esophagus, lower part of your esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum, and your upper part of the anus. All of these will have smooth muscles. Therefore, they are involuntary. You cannot control them. Is that clear? Right. Not only that, walls of the arteries. What do they mean by the walls of the arteries? If you take the artery, right, there is a layer in the artery made up of smooth muscles. In certain instances, your vessels should constrict. Certain instances, it should dilate. This constriction and dilation can be controlled by these smooth muscles. Okay, how many of you have asthma? Nobody. Okay, if you had, I would have explained something else, but it's okay. So smooth muscles are involuntary, found in these locations in churning of the stomach, constriction of the arteries. The tissue is found in the digestive tract, I told you, urinary bladder. So then you might consider, you can voluntarily urinate, right? But keep in mind, there is a smooth muscle layer that is actually found inside the bladder, found in the ureters. Ureter is what connects the kidney to the bladder. So you don't think about taking the urine from the kidney to the bladder, no? That happens naturally. So there also you will find smooth muscle tissue. Then urinary bladder, arteries and other internal organs. Now if you remember, I drew the trachea and the two bronchi here. Bronchi, then eventually bronchioles. Around the bronchioles also you have smooth muscle cells. That's why I asked whether they are asthmatics. Because if you have asthma, your bronchioles will constrict. So you can take a medication to relax the smooth muscle and then it will dilate. Okay? So these smooth muscles are found in various different places. Then next one would be skeletal muscles. There is a good question, but that is related to skeletal muscle. So as I am teaching skeletal muscle, I will answer that question. Right. Composed of bundles of long cells with multiple nuclei. So the question was, is this one cell? Is this one cell? No, this is one cell. This long bundle is one cell. How many nuclei can you see? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 nuclei. So multinucleated, many nuclei are present in one skeletal muscle cell. Okay, the structure of a skeletal muscle also we will be learning later. Online students, can you all see me? Okay, right. So as you can see, long cylindrical cells, smooth muscle cells with spindle shape, multinucleated, uninucleated. Good. The contractile units of these muscle cells are called sarcomeres. Sarcomeres is a specific arrangement of actin and myosin which will facilitate the contraction. I will not go into more detail than that. These sarcomeres are the one that gives this striated appearance to these skeletal muscle cells. The arrangement of that's given. The muscles are generally attached to the skeletal system and helps mainly in voluntary body movement. So all the movements that you are doing right now, looking down, writing, looking up, closing your eyes, all have skeletal muscles. Because you can think and control, right? So when you can control your muscles, it is skeletal muscle. Okay. And why is it called skeletal muscle? Because they are generally attached to the skeletal system. In my previous example, I used my hand, so this one would be a skeletal muscle. because it is attaching one side to the skeleton, the other side to the shoulder. Right. Last one, cardiac muscle tissue. A very fascinating tissue. Why? Huh? No, because it beats from the day you were born until the day you die. At least stomach, there are certain times of contractions and then relaxation. Cardiac muscle, contract, relax, contract, relax, contract, relax, contract, relax, contract, relax, contract, relax. For that 60 times a minute, usual heart rate is 60 to 100. Between that, till the day you die. Unless you run, then it will go to 120, or you walk, or you sleep, then it might go lower. This cardiac muscle will continuously pump and contract from the beginning till the end. Because once this is stopped, alas, your life is over. Unless there are certain conditions where the heart stops and then bring you back to life. So then you technically, even though the heart stopped, your life did not end. Okay? So this is the cardiac muscle. They are composed of uninucleated cells which are interconnected via intercalated discs. So you see, these are branched cells, right? Here you have long cylindrical cells. Here it is branched and uninucleated. Take a look. See, branched cell. Here you have one nucleus. Here you see striations. Okay? Branched cells, uninucleated, presence of striations. Okay? They are interconnected via intercalated discs. Here you see, this is an intercalated disc. This is a special type of junction found between two cardiac muscle cells that are very important. This will be discussed under circulatory system. Okay, just remember that there is something called intercalated discs. Okay, right. Cardiac muscle tissue is responsible for involuntary. So, easy way to remember whether cardiac muscle is voluntary or involuntary. Why? Because you don't control your heartbeat. Okay. Intercalated discs help relay signals from cell. They have mentioned it here itself. Intercalated discs help relay signals from cell to cell and synchronize heart contraction. So your heart is made up of 4 chambers, atria and ventricle. So when the ventricle contracts, atria should relax. When atria contracts, ventricle should relax. So that there has to be some sort of a connection or communication between different cardiac muscle cells to determine who contracts and who relaxes. Intercalated disc plays a part in that. Later we will learn about the conduction system of the heart, then I will go a bit more extra. But for now, if you just remember that intercalated disc plays a role in communication between two cardiac muscle cells, that is enough. Cardiac muscle tissue is only found in the wall of the heart. Cardiac muscle tissue can you find anywhere else? No, then it won't be named as cardiac muscle. Okay? Right. Smooth muscle. Why is it known as smooth muscle? Because it does not have striations. So it looks smooth. Skeletal muscle is the odd one. You just remember that. Then last but not least, out of the tissues is the nervous tissue. Right. Nervous tissue, what do they contain? Nervous tissue contains neurons and glial cells. So neurons is that structure that you see in your next page. Okay, this diagram is important because it is from the arm. This diagram is important because it is from the textbook. This diagram, do you think they would have given in the textbook? No, the cheap buggers will not give this. Then this one is given in the textbook. Right, so you have to remember. The diagrams given in the textbook, you should know how to draw it, okay? Right. Let's take a look at the nervous tissue. Nervous tissue contains neurons and glial cells. So what you see here is a neuron. glial cells are not shown. I didn't show it because you don't need to learn about glial cells yet. So glial cells are type of cells that are found nearby neurons and they can provide support like this to the neuron. You don't need to know more than that. We have to know a few functions of glial cells. Other than that, it's not important. So this is a glial cell. Now I am going to remove the glial cell and focus only on the neuron. Sir, could you explain the definition given for sarcomere? It says contractile unit. The contractile units of these muscles are called sarcomeres. Okay. I will quickly explain that before going to the nervous tissue. So, long cylindrical multinucleated cell. What is that? Skeletal muscle. It has striations. Right? These things are known as the sarcomere. Right? These things are known as a sarcomere. This sarcomere has a specific arrangement of actin and myosin. So the specific arrangement I will now be talking about. So what does this specific arrangement do? This specific arrangement causes the muscle to contract in this manner. So no need to say it, okay? It causes the muscle to contract in this direction. So each sarcomere will cause a contraction like this. Okay? Likewise, each of these sarcomeres will cause a contraction like this. Right? So as you can see, each individual sarcomere is involved in contraction. Then once you accumulate all of these sarcomeres, the entire muscle will contract. So the fundamental level is an each individual sarcomere. That is why you call it as a contractile unit. The sarcomere is the contractile unit. Okay? Right. Okay. Then let's go on to the nervous tissue. So nervous tissue contains neurons and glial cells. Glial cells support the neuron. Right, now let's take a look at the structure of the neuron. The neuron has a cell body. This is the cell body. The neuron has a cell body. It has dendrites. This thing that you see over here is the dendrite, extending from the cell body, known as the dendrites. And the axon. This is the axon. Okay, three parts: cell body, dendrites, axon. Okay. The basic structural unit of the nervous system is the neuron. Keep in mind it says structural unit, not functional unit. Functional unit is something else. Okay. The structural unit is the neuron. Dendrites and cell body is used to receive nerve impulses. Now take a look at the other diagram that I have given. So what is this extension part known as? Dendrites. What is this? Cell body. These things that you see over here, these are known as synaptic terminals. Synaptic terminals, you would see in the previous diagram itself. What is the synaptic terminal? It is the end part of a neuron. So what happens is, a neuron will receive a signal, transport that signal, send it to the next neuron. So what is the part involved in sending it to the next neuron? Synaptic terminal. What is the part involved in receiving the information from another neuron? Cell body and dendrites. So over here what do you see? The synaptic terminal of other neurons are sending the information to the cell body and the dendrites. Then the cell body and the dendrites will take that information, send it through their axon into another synaptic terminal. Good. So then Dendrites and cell body receive nerve impulses. Axon used to transmit impulses to other neurons, cells or muscles. Keep that in mind. What do they mean by other neurons, cells or muscles? So over here you see a neuron is sending an information to another neuron. Okay, right. However, a neuron can send an information to a muscle. Now if I want to contract my right bicep, I have to think and contract. So when I am thinking, the neuron will send information to the muscle, then the muscle will contract. Do you understand that? Right. Likewise, at the end of a neuron, at the end near the synaptic terminal, it can communicate with other neurons as shown in this diagram. It can communicate with muscles or even cells. Nerve supply to organs, nerve supply to glands, all of this can stimulate an outcome. So if nerve supply is there to a gland, that gland can increase its secretion. Nerve supply to a muscle can cause it to contract. Nerve supply to a other nerve is to transport information further. So at the end of this synaptic terminal, what you can find would be either another neuron like this, a muscle or a cell. But when you receive information, it always has to be a neuron. Okay? Right. So over here, this is the cell body, this is the dendrite. This part is involved in receiving or sending? Receiving. So what is it receiving from? The synaptic terminals of other neurons. Not from a muscle, not from a cell. Okay? Right. Our sensory receptors, there's something called sensory receptors, which again we will do in Unit 5 Part 2. But for now, this is all regarding neurons. Is that clear? Right. What are the parts? Cell body, dendrites, axon. Right. How does it receive information? Neurons can receive information from their cell body and dendrites. How do they transport that information? Through these axons. Okay. Right. These axons are bundled together to form nerves. So now, when we say nerves, we don't talk about an individual neuron. Right? I will draw it and show actually. Right? When we are talking about a nerve, we are not talking about an individual neuron. So let's say you have the spinal cord here. Right? You have the spinal cord here. The cell body of a neuron is found inside the spinal cord. Okay? Inside the spinal cord. Then from the spinal cord, it will go and provide its information to, let's say, a muscle. Okay. Now tell me, by common sense, is one neuron enough for one muscle? No. You would need multiple neurons for one muscle. Okay. So then, multiple neurons are involved in supplying that muscle. So then, now what is this long part? What is this long part? The axon. So multiple neurons will send information to that muscle. Now these axons bundle together. What do you call that? Kinase. So then with that neurons are done. Okay? Right. Then the neuroglia, the glial cells. The neuroglial cells are supportive cells of the neuron. So how are they supportive? Their functions include nourishment of nerve cells. So these neuroglia or glial cells can provide energy for these neurons. Okay? Insulation of nerve cells replenishing neurons and sometimes modulate neuron function. Insulation of nerve cells, this is this myelin sheath. Myelin sheath is this covering that you see here around the axon. This covering that you see here around the axon is known as the myelin sheath. The gaps between this covering is known as the nodes of Ranvier. Okay, this myelin sheath is an insulator. Now imagine if you had a wire, right? All of these wires are covered by some material, right? That material, is it an insulator or conductor? Insulator. Why do you have an insulator? To ensure current is not wasted, right? Just like that, neurons also transmit current. So just like having an insulator in normal wires, you will have an insulator in this neuron also. Okay. Details about this action potential and transmission of nerve impulses will be done in Unit 5 Part 2. Right. Then that is what they mean by insulation of nerve cells. These neuroglial cells are important in generating this insulation or myelin sheath. Has it mentioned? No. Just write it down. Might be important later. Myelin sheath. Replenishing neurons and sometimes modulate neuron functions. Modulate neuron function is, now let's say there is a compound that excites this neuron. If there is excess of this compound found near the neuron will be overexcited. In that case, that excess neurotransmitter or the excess compounds can be taken in by these neuroglial cells. So by doing that, it is modulating or regulating the function of this neuron. Do you understand that? Okay. Right. Replenishing neurons is providing the necessary energy for these neurons, plus it also talks about producing new nerve cells. But we don't need to know details, just remember it as replenishing neurons. That is enough. So, that is it for nervous tissue. Summary: neurons, cell body, dendrites, axon, synaptic terminals. Cell body and dendrites receive, synaptic terminals give. Then you have neuroglia. Neuroglia nourish, insulate, replenish and modulate. That's all for nervous tissue. So with that, we have completed all 4 tissues that is found in the human body. So we have done cardiac, muscle and nervous. Take 5 minutes. Now the time is 5:30. Take 5 minutes to write whatever you remember and then check where you have gone wrong or where you have misunderstood. If you have any questions, you can ask. Online students, if you have any questions, you can ask. And then from 5:35 to 5:45, 5:50, we will have a break. Yeah. Can you explain glial cells again? Glial cells are this. Now over here you can only see a neuron. Glial cells are supportive cells that are found near neurons. Like this. That are found near neurons. These glial cells have various functions. First function, let's take a look at nourishment of nerve cells. These glial cells can provide energy necessary for the transmission of impulses to this neuron. That is one function. Second one, insulation of nerve cells. This part that you see here is known as a myelin sheath. It is like an insulator which can increase the speed of nerve conduction. That insulation is provided or created by these glial cells. Replenishing neurons, producing new neurons, then getting rid of any foreign materials that can damage these neurons. All of these can be done by this supporting cell. Modulate neuron function. Let's say due to some condition there is a high amount of high amount of compounds that can excite this neuron. That is bad. So excess of these compounds can be taken in by these glial cells. So that is another function. So to simply put, the different functions would be nourishment, insulation of nerve cells, replenishing the neurons, and modulating the neuron function. So 4 functions you need to remember regarding glial cells. The explanation I gave for each is not important to remember. You just have to remember the function. That is enough. Is it clear? Okay.